Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Bear Down Ballers. We are back for the 2025-26 college basketball season. The Arizona Wildcats are tipping off their season against the Florida Gators, the defending national champions, on Monday, but we'll get into that later. But first, we're going to go through the schedule. We're going to give our predictions for Arizona in the Big 12, where we think they're going to finish in the March Madness tournament. But before we get going with that, I'm Ryan Wall, returning for my fifth season. And for my third season, I am joined by Jordan Pollock. Jordan, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. We're so close to November. By the time this releases, we may be into November, which is basketball, college basketball season. I'm so excited, and let's get going.
Yeah, well, like you just said, the year is quickly approaching, and let's kind of pick up where we left off in the off season. We haven't been on in a couple months, and since then, a lot has changed. And I kind of want to, since we've already discussed in our last off season episode the changes and some newcomers with the roster, but I want to give everyone a refresher before we get going here into the schedule. And I want to start with players who left. Arizona had seven players leave the roster: Caleb Love, Trey Townsend, Carter Bryant, KJ Lewis, Henry Vasar, Conrad Martinez, and Emmanuel Steven. They all departed. A couple of them are still in college basketball. A couple of them ran out of eligibility, either playing pro basketball or off to other things. And Arizona has four returning veterans, key parts of their team. That is Jaden Bradley, Anthony Del Orso, Mo Krivas, Toby Awaka, and they have one veteran who is a newcomer from Harvard. That is Evan Nelson, the pride of Tucson, Arizona, returns home for his senior season. And Arizona has seven freshmen joining the program this year. And it's starting off with two five-star prospects: Braden Berries, Koa Pete, and then a couple four stars: Ivan Kurchanikov, Dwayne Aristode, Bryce James, Mabeel Mawoot, and CD Gay. Those are the seven new freshmen that are coming to Arizona. Jordan, I just wanted to get your first thoughts about the guys leaving, the newcomers coming to Tucson. What do you think of this new roster and how Tommy Lloyd built this for his fifth year at the helm in Tucson?
Yeah, I don't hate the fit at all. It's a lot of very talented players, but especially so far in this Tommy Lloyd era, he's kind of at least pretty much brought on around two to three transfers that pretty much were going to have an immediate impact either in a starting role or off the bench, just somebody to give them minutes. And so this is a pretty big rarity, as it's not unusual for us Arizona fans. Is before Tommy Lloyd, we had Sean Miller, who just geared freshman recruiting classes. So it's not different from our perspective, but it is a little different seeing Tommy Lloyd being at the helm and doing this. And so I'm not really sure if that was kind of he purposefully wanted to do that and just kind of change up at least kind of the tempo that he's been going with the program, or if that's kind of just how the cards fell. I would assume that's probably just how the cards fell. And so I'm still really excited. Like you said, four guys from last year's team that were pretty much very solid role players, all of them returning, and especially in the exhibition games, we've seen kind of some different lineups with some of them, and so I'm curious to see how who he's gonna start, who he's gonna have coming off first off the bench. But a lot of it's really up for how quick these freshmen can grow and get into the system and feel ready to play some grown up basketball, because that's kind of the nature of college basketball and college athletics in general, is it's older guys transferring around, staying around the game for many years, and it's becoming almost a grown man's league. I know that's kind of the thing that they say in the NBA, but it feels like that's kind of where the sport is at. It feels like the last three national championship teams, the best player usually on the team is a guy that transferred into the program and it's had been at other spots before. So with all that being said, it'll be a show me, I think, kind of season for a lot of the freshmen, and how well they can grow up, I think, is going to determine a lot of this team's success.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this season, and some of the things you said, I agree with, including this team. It has they have so many talented players and versatile players that can play in so many different styles and ways, and I think this team is very similar to the last time when, like you were saying, with Sean Miller recruiting, the big time freshmen in 2019 when Arizona had two five-star freshmen. That was the last time they've had two top freshmen in the country because, like you said, Sean Miller recruited freshmen. Tommy Lloyd, his first couple years, didn't do that a ton, had more veterans, but I like that he's changing things up. Arizona and Tommy Lloyd, he's had a lot of success at Arizona. As we know, he has been to two straight Sweet 16s. He's been to a Sweet 16 in 3 out of 4 seasons as Arizona head coach. But I like him switching things up because to me, like you said, in this era, I don't think you can be too stagnant. You always got to adapt and go with the flow. So one year it could be a lot of veterans. The next year, like this year, it may be a ton of freshmen. And I really like the way that he built this roster because he brought back a couple veterans and then he's mixing in a ton of young talent. I think all that does is elevate your, that elevates your ceiling. Arizona is going to be a great team led by the veterans and Jaden Bradley. You're bringing back Del Orso, Krivas, Awaka, guys that were good last year. And I think bringing in all those freshmen is only going to benefit the team a ton moving forward. And Jordan, like you mentioned, Arizona did play two exhibition games. The one notable one, they played St. Mary's, a great team from the WCC, and Arizona won 81-68 in this game. And in this game, they had five players score in double figures, led by Jaden Bradley, 23 points, 7 for 11 from the field. He was just excellent. And then you had Del Orso, Krivas, Berries, and Pete rounding it out with over 10 apiece. And I think that was a great example of what we're going to see a lot this year. And that is, kind of a by committee approach. We're not going to see, Caleb Love's gone. Caleb Love had a lot of positives and a lot of negatives, but one of his negatives were he sometimes would just flat out hog the ball and not get everyone involved and just worry about himself at times. And I don't think we're going to see a lot of that this season because there's so many unselfish players and there's so many guys that are just great playmakers on this team. Do you kind of see it that way as well?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think there's enough talent on this team to be able to be okay with that for a certain extent. But like we said, it comes to a certain point to where you still got to have a guy that's going to be able to get you a bucket.
Yeah, for sure, Jordan. But I want to get into our predictions. Like I said, I want to start with our win-loss predictions for Arizona, where they're going to finish in the Big 12, the powerful Big 12, as always, as we know, and how they're going to finish in March Madness. And then we could give our national championship pick. And then I want to finish it off with a preview against number 3 Florida because that's coming up on Monday, November 3rd. That is the marquee game of opening night in college basketball next week. But so yeah, I just want to start off. What's your prediction? How many games do you think Arizona is going to win and lose this season? This is a really tough schedule. I think we both could agree on that. They play 31 games, 12 ranked matchups, five non-conference ranked matchups that are all taking place in the first 3 months of the season or first 2 months of the season before they start conference play in January. So very, very tough. I give a lot of credit for Tommy Lloyd for scheduling this tough of a non-conference schedule when you have such a hard conference schedule coming up at the beginning of 2026. So give me your win-loss prediction.
Definitely. I think looking at this schedule, it looked very similar to like an Oreo cookie, if that makes sense. You've pretty much got three layers. You've got the first part of the season heavy in the non-conference, multiple top-ranked teams, and then once we get to January, I think they could go 6-7-0 to start the Big 12. There's a lot of
Agree.
cream in there where I think they can rack up a lot of wins, and then it just gets crazy hard with Kansas, Houston, Baylor, BYU, all within like 2 weeks of each other. And Kansas, they play them twice within that ranked. And so I think they're going to start a little bit hard with the non-conference. They're going to be able to load themselves up a little bit in conference play. And then I think February is going to hit them like a truck. I think 21-10 is where I think this team's going to go. In those 5 conference losses, so I got 13-5 in Big 12 play. The 5 conference losses, twice to BYU, once to Houston, and I got them splitting with Kansas. So I think they'll win at home, and then they'll lose at Lawrence again, and then losing at home to Tech.
Sounds good. Yeah, I got um not too far off from you. I'm a little more optimistic. My record would say that. I got Arizona finishing 24-7, which is actually coincidentally what they finished a year ago. Although I originally I do think this team has more upside, and I do think they could finish better than both of our predictions. I think they could finish better than have less than 7 and 10 losses. But yeah, they still do have, like I mentioned, 7 freshmen, so that had a lot of concern for me, especially like you said, they have a crazy tough February and March before the NCAA tournament. So that's why I went with 12 and or 24-7. I think Arizona is gonna finish. I have them finishing third in the Big 12, but I actually think there's a chance Arizona could even finish higher than that. I really do. I think there is a chance Arizona could finish first or second in the Big 12. That may sound crazy, but I'm expecting a big jump from Arizona's veterans, Jaden Bradley, Toby Awaka, Mo Crevis, who really hasn't fulfilled his potential in any of his 3 seasons at Tucson. And if these freshmen, more specifically Koa Pete and Braden Burries, are as good as expected, I think Arizona it could really beat any of those teams in the Big 12, including Houston, including BYU, and because I just think they have that much upside.
I I love your opinions. I absolutely love them because this I feel like is one of the first times in us running the show where I do not feel that a lot of those things in that way, specifically with the veterans. I feel like a lot of these veterans have given us everything they're going to give us. I think some of their strengths are really evident, and I think some of their weaknesses are very evident. And so I think this team is pretty much. I think their ceiling is going to be met by how their freshmen perform. I think with the veterans returning, I think that adds a lot of rebounding with Mo Krivas. I think he's going to give you that. I think Jaden Bradley's going to give you a really good, a very highly above average point guard, which I think helps this team a lot, and especially with the conference play. But I really think specifically the Barrios and Koa Pete, I think those guys play. I think can make this team go from good, which I think they're good right now, to a great team. And I think just some of the scoring that I've seen from Braden and how easy he can get to the rack and how athletic he is, I think he can cause a lot of problems. I think he's the guy. I think if they create the the go-to scoring guy, I think if it was him, I think this team would be great. And even Koa Pete too. The kid shows me flashes of like a Paolo Banchero kind of guy. He's big and he can shoot and he can get to the rim and he's athletic. I think if Koa plays to his potential, I think the sky's the limit for this team. I just think a majority of where my record is at is because of how loaded this conference is year in and year out. And so with that and just also Arizona's second year in the conference. So the first year was hard for him. Second year, I think, is even going to be more challenging to an extent. And even Kelvin Sampson, he said when he was talking about Kansas, who I've got Kansas finishing first, unpopular opinion.
Wow.
But right now, in the era of college basketball that we live in, because of the transfer portal, you'll miss on guys and you'll have a down year. Kansas had a down year. I think they'll be back. Iowa State should have finished a lot higher than they did last year. They had injuries, and all these things are going to play into every single team in the country. BYU added a crap load of talent with the freshman expected number one overall pick in next year's draft, and a great transfer. Was it a transfer from? Is it from Baylor?
Yeah, Rob Wright, an
Rob
excellent
Wright.
guard.
And then Houston is still Houston, right? And then Iowa State, like I said, I think they're going to stay healthy. I've got Arizona finishing fifth in the Big 12, which with how loaded this roster is, that could still easily be a top three, top four seed in the NCAA tournament. Um,
100%. This conference is the premier conference in college basketball.
yep.
I know other conferences have had their good stretches, but I just think there's no better conference than the Big 12. And yeah, maybe I'm a little too optimistic because I mentioned the freshmen, but as you just stated, I loved your comparison of Pete and Paolo Banchero, one of my favorite players to watch in the NBA. And I really think that that duo they do have such a high ceiling because as freshmen, you really don't know how good they actually are. They've showed signs in the exhibition games. In high school, we've seen clips, but we haven't seen them in college basketball. But I just think I think these guys are more ready than, for example, the last two or top five-star freshmen we had in Nico Mannion and
Josh.
and Josh Green back in 2019. So
Yep.
I think this duo will be better. And I think Jaden Bradley, although I'm not the highest on his scoring ability, he's such an incredible playmaker, one of the best point guards in the country. And he went from 7 points a game to 12.3 points a game last season. So I think he's going to take another jump up. Will that jump be, 14 or will it be closer to 17 even maybe? Where's that jump going to be for Jaden Bradley? I don't know that, but I do think Jaden Bradley and the two-star freshman I think is a great trio, and I really think that I mean more importantly, I'm just more excited to watch this team than some of these past Arizona teams because the past couple teams going into the year, we knew what we were gonna get. Another season of Caleb Love last year, another season of Jules Tabelis, another season of Benedict Mather in the last couple years. All those players were fantastic for Arizona. But now we have that level of intrigue that just makes this team so exciting to watch, and that's why I'm so I can't wait for the season to start. So we both gave our win-loss predictions, where they're going to finish in the Big 12, but we got to give our predictions where we think they're going to finish in the March Madness tournament. So Jordan, start us off.
I think this team is a second weekend team. I think they're able to get out of the first weekend. And so I think they're I think the highest they could get is probably to play a Sunday or a Saturday game on the second weekend. I have this team finishing right where they did last year, right at the Sweet 16. But I think they could get to the Elite Eight. But I think just the youth in this team, I think, is going to prevent them from going a little bit further. Like I said, with just the how transfers have impacted this game and how age and depth really play a big toll. There's just a lot of freshmen on this team and a lot of youth to for me to say that I think this team goes really into the third weekend and even goes really far into the second weekend. So that's where I've got this team. I think Sweet 16 is a
Yeah.
good spot where I've got them finishing.
Yeah, that's a great finishing mark as they've done three of the last four seasons. Two players that we haven't touched on yet, two newcomers, two freshmen that really impressed me. Stats aside, they didn't put up the biggest numbers, but just what I saw, Ivan Karchenkov and Dwayne Aristode, those two guys really impressed me. Just how athletic and versatile they were so early on into their careers, just playing a couple exhibition games. But Aristode is not built like a freshman. I mean, that guy, you know, is built like a junior or senior, and I really think he's going to be a guy that could play so many different positions. I mean, he was outside on the wing, but he's 6'8", he may be 6'9". I mean, he's a big guy. I mean, he could also play inside, but he can play small ball or smaller lineups for Arizona. I really think his shooting stroke looked pretty good, and Karchenkov, I mean, that guy looked really good on defense. Really put out a great effort on D. And I mean, that guy's shot was terrific. I mean, so having those two guys off the bench while having the two veterans off the bench and Toby Awaka and Evan Nelson, who I think will be an excellent backup point guard for Arizona, a veteran guy that has a lot of experience, played in the Ivy League for a couple years. So yeah, though I really think Arizona's bench this year could be better than it was in previous years. And as we know, you need to have a solid bench. You need to have reliable guys to come in and give you solid minutes. So, yeah, what do you think about those couple guys off the bench this
Yeah,
year?
I love that you named Karchenkov because I thought, especially in the St. Mary's game, I just love the way that kid plays. He can shoot the ball. He's athletic. He's got some size. Like, even watching him and I think some of the ball skills he had, I'm thinking to myself, this guy's going to play a stretch four. Like, he kind of gives me, I, I don't really know. He just seems sneaky, like skillful to me. He kind of has given me a little bit of Joey Ingles and just kind of how he plays. And I think some of the finesse moves around the rim that he had, he just super impressed me. And so that's a guy I'm really excited to see how much run he can get. And it's going to be interesting how they go with some of the splits, and especially with some of this league. I know a lot of the teams in this league like to run two bigs, and so are they going to keep Pete in the starting position, or are they going to move Awaka to the starting position to go with pretty much almost like two fives with him? Um,
Or could I just thought of, or could they go with a mega lineup and they go Krevis, Owaka, and Pete at the three?
you probably could. They probably could get away with that, which I would love to see. And so I've loved, at least in the exhibition games, which I know it's normal. Like, I'm not going to overreact, but the different lineups that we've seen, and I understand, like, you want roles defined and you want guys playing in the roles, but I kind of want to see some flexibility, especially with how much of that we see in the game of basketball. Like, I want to see them kind of change some lineups because I know that's been like one of Tommy Lloyd's things. It's like we have a true five with the five every single game, and we're gonna roll with that. And it's like, okay, I get that, but I want some different stuff. I want to see some flexibility with some of their lineups, and not so much that they're playing to the other team, but I think it can be a major part of this identity of for this year's team, especially with just how flexible they are.
Yeah, 100%. I would love to see them play bigger. And if I had a bet, I mean, we both, I'll just flat out say, we're both not the biggest fans of Anthony Del Orso from a season ago. And I really think he's in that starting position as like a placeholder because I think there's a couple guys off the bench and the couple of guys we were just talking about could easily take that position. And if I had a bet, he won't be starting probably midway through the year at the very least. I think somebody will take that position. Who will it be? I'm not sure this second, but I do think that Tommy Lloyd's going to experiment with the roster, with the starting lineup, and see, where guys play best. And I do think another thing, I think Tommy Lloyd will experiment with, taking Jaden Bradley out and giving Barry some minutes at the one,
Yep.
without Bradley. Because I think if you could have one of those two guys, I think Bradley's terrific on ball, a really good passer himself, not just a scorer and a shooter. So I think they could excel there. But yeah, this roster is just really fun. I think it's a really good roster for Tommy Lloyd. Think he really built it well. But Jordan, we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we are gonna give our national championship picks, and then we're gonna break down number 13 Arizona versus number 3 Florida on the first day of the season, November 3rd. All right, Jordan, we're back. And before we break down Florida, Arizona, I wanted to give our national championship picks. And before we started recording this earlier, I told you I think this is one of the weirdest years in a long time in college basketball. As we know, there's a ton of player movement, a ton of great freshmen, added to, the sport. But I just don't really believe that there's a clear number one team. I know there's multiple teams that are ranked high, with Purdue at the top, with Houston at the top. But I'm not that confident in either of them. I like, I love Houston. I love their coaching. I love, I love Sampson, but I'm just not that confident in them. And when you go down the list, Florida, who's another team that's, towards the top and favored, and UConn 4, the team that I'm going with to win the national championship, although they've never won a national championship, they have a guy that is one of the best coaches, not only today, Jordan, but one of the best coaches of all time, and that is Rick Pitino and St. John's. I'm picking them to win the national championship, and Rick Pitino to win his third national championship with his third different program. When I'm breaking down all the teams, when this team's at their best, they do need some health with they need a healthy Bryce Hopkins, who they got from Providence, who hasn't been healthy in a couple of years. He's been dealing with so many injuries, but Zuby Ejiofor is just so elite. He's coming back for his senior year. They got Ian Jackson. They got Jocelyn Sonan from Arizona State. I just really like the makeup of this team. They also brought in Dylan Mitchell. I think they're a good veteran roster. And although they came up short last year, I think another year with Patino, at the helm at St. John's, I just think this is the team I'm backing right now. Do I think they'll? Like I said, I'm still going back and forth on this. It's hard for me to pick a team because, like I said, I just don't think any team is far and ahead. But I'm gonna go with the Johnnies to win the national championship right here on our first podcast of the year. Jordan, give me your team.
I love how you started with it. You started and you looked at the coach, and that is exactly how I went. I looked at my top 10 for the AP poll because I feel like that's a pretty somewhat good place to start. Because I don't know the metrics behind it, but it's usually, I feel like there's never really been like a Cinderella team that started off the year completely unranked that like found a way to win it. It's usually a good program, a good team that has a mixture of good players, good transfers, good incoming freshmen. And so that's also where I started. I looked at, okay, who are these top teams? What are their coaches? What is the culture that they have instilled in their program? And for me, it's pretty easy to look no further than Dan Hurley at UConn, who Arizona also plays at the start of this brutal non-conference. And so culture, Dan Hurley's got it. He's a basketball sicko, which I love. You gotta have that, especially at that program to be able to win at a high level, which he's done. He had a hard year last year. Had a great freshman who's now in the NBA, brought in some transfers. Those transfers, for better or worse, some of them worked out pretty well, some of them didn't. And so I look at right now, one big transfer that he got with this team, Silas Damari Jr., who averaged 13 points per game at Georgia. I think that's a kind of guy that you bring into a new system, and averaging that and how good the SEC was last year, I think Dan Hurley can bring that team again to the finish line. And I just love Dan Hurley. And I think they just have a lot of the blueprint things that you need for a national championship. So I've got Dan Hurley getting his third in 4 years.
Yeah, that would be something, wouldn't it?
It would.
You have UConn, who's ranked number four, and I have St. John's, who's ranked number five in the preseason AP poll. So, although we're both taking top five teams, we're both fading. To me, the top three teams are to me the most popular picks that I've seen this year: Purdue, Houston, and Florida. Those are the most popular teams. We're all going against the most popular in the public there, but. Jordan, I want to, before we go today, I want to talk about Arizona's first game because they have a game against one of those national champion favorites, and that is the Florida Gators, who are returning after Todd Golden led them to a national championship last year, but they're without like Arizona, who lost a lot of veterans last year, they lost a lot of veterans too. They lost their top three scorers. Their, three-headed monster, as people were calling them in the backcourt. They're all gone, and the lone guy from last season team that was a contributor is Alex Condon, who returns. And this team is built around a couple big transfers that they landed. Boogie Flan, who's coming from Arkansas, a very talented freshman from a year ago, and Xavier Lee, a very talented veteran from Princeton, from the Ivy League, just like Arizona got their backup point guard from Evan Nelson. So I just when I broke down this team, I think they're very good, and I think they will be good. They're very well coached, as we saw Todd Golden and the job he did to elevate that team a season ago. I think he'll do similar things this year. But I just think that I don't think they have enough to win the national championship. And when you're breaking down this game against Arizona, I think you could argue Arizona is the more talented team. You really can. Boogie Flan's a great player, but he isn't as proven as a Jaden Bradley is. Xavier Lee's a great player, but he played in the Ivy League. That's not the Big 12. That's not, the SEC. So I just think that this Arizona team right now, they're plus 3.5 against Florida on opening night. They're plus 154 to win this game outright. And I'm just going to go with my pick right here, Jordan. I think Arizona is going to upset number three Florida, the reigning and defending national champions, on opening night. And after the first night, the team that everyone's going to be talking about is the Arizona Wildcats. Give me your pick.
Wow, I think you laid a great case. I think for why I think Florida is going to win this game. Like they do have talent. You're saying there's probably a little bit of a talent discrepancy, and especially with Florida just winning the national championship, how many pats on the back Golden has gotten for kind of what he did. But at the end of the day, this game, as a majority of all major sports games, are about the Jimmies and the Joes. And when you bring in that many transfers, those guys that have played at that high of a level, I still give it to them over these freshmen that are still unproven. And I would love to see it. I would love to see it. I would love to see Braden and Pete go out there and light it up and introduce themselves to every single person in America. But that's a big stage. Opening night in Vegas, which Mikhail North, I'm not going to say it definitely won't happen because it probably could, but I just think it's a lot of experience and it's a lot of things to overturn, uh, given the circumstances and given the context right now. So I've got Florida winning on opening night.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a tough challenge for sure. Like you said, it's Arizona versus Florida. Todd Golden, Tommy Lloyd taking place at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Arizona has had plenty of success there. And before we go, some stats with Arizona versus Florida. The teams are 2-2 against each other. This is the first matchup since 2012, and Arizona won that matchup by 1 point. And this is the fifth time 2-2, like I said, first time in 13 years that the teams are facing off. So it's just great to see that two of the best programs in America are facing off on the first night of the season and, going head to head because, you know, we know that losses at the beginning of the season aren't losses towards the middle of the season and the end of the season. So if Arizona, even if they lose this game, they can quickly bounce back. Same goes for Florida. Any other thoughts, Jordan, on this game or just on Arizona in general for this season?
Just a quick contextual thing. That 2012 game, was that the Derek Williams block game?
I believe it is off the top of my head. I
Okay.
believe so.
Okay, definitely feel like I'm gonna have to watch highlights from that game to get myself psyched up for, as well as all of you awesome Arizona fans. That'll bring back some great memories from that game.
Yeah, for sure. It will. I can't wait for this game. And like I said to start this off. Arizona doesn't stop there. They play number three Florida. They have a couple easier matches. They play Utah Tech. They play NAU, but then they're right back at it playing one of their biggest rivals on November 14th, UCLA. It's great to see UCLA on the schedule. It just wasn't the same last season with them, not playing them, in their normal Pac-12 conference game. And then they play UConn. So three of the first, five games, Arizona is playing a top 12 team in college basketball. I don't. It's just hard to put that into context, and it's hard it's crazy to even see that because in past years we know Arizona has had these schedules, especially when the Pac-12 was even easier. They had even longer stretches where they weren't playing top teams, and it felt like it was a couple of months before they had a big matchup. And now, right off the bat, it's 7 o'clock. November 3rd, it's Arizona, it's Florida, it's on TNT. I can't wait for that one. Jordan has Florida winning. I have Arizona winning. These were our predictions for the 2025-26 season. I'm Ryan Walk. He's Jordan Pollock. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you after the Florida.